Kia ora, no mai, haere mai, welcome. Thank you for joining me this evening, and thank you to those who are also watching on the replay if you couldn't make the live session. This webinar and masterclass is on how to run after having a baby. It's going to be roughly about 30 minutes long. So to get the most out of it, I recommend you do put your phone away so you can focus on what I'm about to tell you. And then that way you won't have to go and watch it and replay it again. But let's get into a little bit of housekeeping for those who are watching live. If anything does look strange, freezes, or you lose sound, please refresh your browser and join back into the Zoom. And if that doesn't fix that, let me know. So this webinar masterclass is for you if you've had a baby and you want to start running, or you have already tried it and it didn't go to plan. You may also have pelvic floor weaknesses or complications. Maybe it's from birth or maybe it's subsequent, and they make you a little bit scared, and that running may make it worse. You could also be confused about what postpartum running information is true and what isn't true. So feel free to pop in the chat box how old your children are, and if you have already tried to have a run, how did it go? I'd love to hear your stories. So during this masterclass, you're going to learn why it's important to give your body time to heal after giving birth and not just jump straight back into running. So I'll give you a recommended timeline for running after having a baby. Plus, I'll take you through a running readiness test to see if you are ready for that first run. I'll also show you what you can do at home to get running ready, even if you can't actually run yet. And at the end, I'll provide you some information about my 8-week postpartum program, Run Confident, Run Strong. It puts all of what we're talking about in this masterclass together for you in one PDF ebook. Plus, there are going to be some time-sensitive bonuses for watching the session, and I'll let you know what those are nearer the end. So let's get started. So my name is Sierra. I'm Sparkle Fitness, and I'm a running and triathlon coach as well as a personal trainer. I did used to be a lawyer, but I had a career change after the COVID pandemic. Maybe some of you can relate to that. But also I have been a runner and a triathlete for many years. I've been running since primary school, so it's very ingrained in my identity and psychology. But when I tried to return to running after having my daughter, I had pains. I couldn't get any sort of speed going. I felt like no matter how much I ran, I wasn't improving, and it was just generally really unenjoyable. So maybe if you have started running already, you can relate to that. You can relate to the joint pain, getting tight hips and feeling all locked up in the hips and the pelvic area. Maybe you too felt like you were just running at the same speed for every run, and it just always felt slow and heavy and tired, and just that you weren't getting anywhere. The good news is I did get much better after putting in place some of what I'm about to share with you in this masterclass. What I've achieved over the course of my athletic career is I've been an Ironman World Champ qualifier for Kona. I've also had multiple 70.3 Ironman qualifications and exterior qualifications. I've been a top age group triathlon and with the national triathlon, as well as Ironman and 70.3 placings. I also have regional and national running podiums. I'm an accredited TriNZ coach, and I'm also qualified in postpartum running and women's health coaching. So it's my mission with Sparkle Fitness to ensure that no mum leaks when running, and that mums are empowered to run safely and effectively. So as I mentioned, I've created some awesome bonuses for those who are watching the session live, and if you jump on it quite quickly after getting the email when I've uploaded this after. And if you choose to take the next step to join me in my running programs, you'll get some extra little gifts, and I'll go over those closer to the end. So let's start with the 6-week checkup that you have after you've had your baby. Does this clear you for running? If I were to ask you when a safe time to start running after a baby would be, after giving birth, what would you say? When you feel like it, 6 weeks after birth, 3 months after birth, or something longer? Now, what actually happens at that 6-week check, and does it clear you for running? The short answer is no. This check is mainly about the baby. Your baby is examined, weighed, etc. If you've already had your 6-week check, you know what I'm talking about. If you've had more than one baby, you'll know what I'm talking about. You do have a discussion about your mental health, how you're feeding in terms of breastfeeding and parenting. There'll be a little bit about the mum in terms of your blood pressure, some other examinations. They'll talk through your birthing recovery, your family relationships, that sort of thing. They'll also maybe check your stitches and if you had a cesarean or if you had some tears around your pelvic floor area from birth, they'll check those and see how they're healing. But these GP checkups, and remember, they usually only last 15 minutes. So this is a lot to get through. It's going to be very rare that they're actually going to check the integrity and strength of your pelvic floor. And they're not, as far as I'm aware, generally in the habit of checking your abdominal separation, especially if it's nothing of concern from a medical perspective. So even if the GP says that you're all good to exercise, very little is given in the way of how to return to exercise, let alone running. The other important fact to remember is that you are now postnatal for life. There is no return to your pre-baby normality. Once you've had a baby, your body has always had a baby. So let's have a look at the timeline for the first year post-birth. 0 to 6 weeks, we're looking at starting our pelvic floor exercises. Now, this may be because you've had some advice from your GP as to your pelvic floor, or maybe you've already gone to see a women's health physio. But in any event, running increases intra-abdominal pressure. So this requires strong, supportive pelvic floor muscles to combat the changes being placed on the organs, essentially as you jump up and down. So this pressure can increase as much as 2.5 times your body weight. So let me ask you this. If you had an injury or a weakness in part of your body that you could see, maybe you had shin splints, maybe you had a broken leg, you wouldn't knowingly put such an increase of force through it, especially when you're in things like casts. But because we can't see our pelvic floor or internal organs, it's easy to overlook them, especially if you don't actually get any sort of pain response from the activity that you're doing. Now, birth is a trauma, and your body needs time to rest and recover from it. This is going to be different for everyone, but what I'm going through now is given as a standard guideline or time frame. But if in doubt, err on the side of caution, because it is always better to rest more than to start too soon. So these timeframes come from a 2019 UK study. This is our starting point for guidance on postpartum running. And there's a link to the summary that I can put in if anyone is interested. I can pop it into the chat and I can also email it out to you. It's quite in depth, but it's a really good starting point. We also have Dr. Stacey Sims has some great research and articles out there on running postpartum. Her suggestion is that you can start running relatively soon after birth as long as you had no complications. But complications can include things like interventions, tears. We'll go through some of that in the next slides. And she also suggests that you may be able to start running around that 8-month mark. So what does relatively soon mean? So again, 0 to 6 weeks, we're going to start our pelvic floor exercises. In the 6 to 12 weeks, we're going to add in some light strength work and short walks. So low impact exercises here are a great option. If all this is progressing well, then around that 12-week, 3-month mark, you might be able to start to try your first run, maybe a little bit earlier, but this is where you can try the return to running readiness test in the subsequent slides to see how your pelvic floor is handling impact, how much of your strength you've regained and recovered after birth. But most importantly, I encourage you to see a pelvic floor physio first, because they can address things that you may not even know you have, like a prolapse, which is not the end of the world because there are different degrees. But if you don't know that you have it, then it's going to be hard for you to act in an according way to not make it worse. So then around the 6-month mark, you're going to start building into running or continue to work and continue as well to work on strength and body alignment, because it does actually take quite a while, in terms of about 6 to 9 months, for your body to realign itself after having a baby. There's also a stat that after about 6 months, if you've had a cesarean, you can be anywhere between 72 to 92% healed in terms of your abdominal muscles and fascia and what they've cut through. So that's still a little bit of a weak point then, even at the 6-month mark. 12 months, gradually build up over the first year is what you want to do. You want to aim for consistency over speed, and we'll also talk about how breastfeeding is going to impact this. So again, as Dr. Stacey Sims has suggested, you might be able to start doing events around the 8-month mark, but a lot is going to depend on your own birthing history and experience and how you are recovering. My own experience was that while I was breastfeeding, events were much more for participation than competition or performance-based. It was just simply too exhausting and unpredictable with what my baby was going to do, whether I was going to get a good night's sleep, and that all sort of took its toll if I tried to train too hard and have a performance goal. So I learned that lesson the hard way. So let's talk about what can affect this timeline. So that timeline is for if everything's all going well, no birthing complications or subsequent complications. So a whole systems approach is needed for returning to running. It's not just about birth. It's not just about baby. It takes a village to raise a child, but you also need those support systems in place for your exercise regime as well. So birthing complications, tears, cesareans, intervention methods and ongoing bleeding, etc., they're all going to basically delay the recovery and extend that timeline out further. If you have a prolapse, like I talked about in the previous slides, there are various types and degrees of prolapse. Some are going to be more serious than others. But if you don't know that you have a prolapse because you can't feel it, which can happen, and you have a weakened pelvic floor that is not going to hold basically your organs in, running could be a bit of a risk factor for you. So you're going to want to get that addressed so you can work on your pelvic floor strength before you start running. Also related to that is your pelvic floor function. A weak or tight pelvic floor can both lead to leakages and other symptoms. So it's not necessarily a weak muscle that we have to watch out for. It's also a tight muscle that you need to watch out for. Body pains, pelvic pain, joint pain, hernias, that sort of stuff. Those are all things that are going to indicate a little bit more recovery time is needed. So I cannot stress the value of going to see a women's health physio or pelvic floor physio. As already mentioned, running increases intra-abdominal pressure, plus birth is a risk factor for a prolapse. And we cannot see that, and you may not feel it or know about it. And I'm not trying to scare you with this information. I'm just trying to arm you with the knowledge so you can go out and run with confidence that you are not making things worse because you didn't know about them. In most cases, these things can be fixed, and you don't necessarily need to stop running if that's what you're worried about. It will just be a question of degree and what other things you need to do to support your running. Newborn stuff as well. So a lack of sleep, energy, changes in hormones, you return to work, your partner returns to work. These are all going to be demands on your energy. And whether we like to admit it or not, exercise is another demand on our energy. And if it's done right, it can make us feel better. But if we do too much, it will just make us feel worse. And at the end of the day, we still need to come home and look after a baby. So let's talk a little bit more about the pelvic floor and pelvic floor exercises. So did you know that 1 in 12 women will have a pelvic organ prolapse? Now, I looked at the Incontinence Australian site, and 50% of women who have had a baby will have a prolapse according to their statistics. Remember, that's different degrees of prolapse. It's not all falling out. But there are going to be certain things that are going to put you more at risk of pelvic floor dysfunction and prolapse. So pregnancy and birth are 2 of them. Menopause is also another. So that explains some of the other statistics. So 44% of women aged between 60 to 74 reported some kind of incontinence. And 2 in 3 women will experience pelvic floor dysfunction at some stage of their lives. So that you may not actually have had a baby, but when you hit menopause, you could experience some of these symptoms and dysfunctions as well. Of those women who have had a pelvic floor dysfunction, 40% of them are not doing their pelvic floor exercises correctly. So for example, they're squeezing their glutes, their butt, their legs, their stomachs, they're doing something, but they're not actually exercising their pelvic floor muscle. And this is simply because they just don't know what they should be feeling. And they think if they're squeezing something, then it's working. And that's a shame, because those women are putting in all this effort and they're not actually getting the benefit that they think they're getting or they're hoping they're getting. So let's have a little look here about how to do pelvic floor exercises. So the first thing, and I encourage you to do this, to sit in your chair, come forward out the chair so that you're sitting on the edge of it with your feet on the floor, nice and comfortable. We want your head over your shoulders and your shoulders over your hips. So don't lean back into your chair, and try to keep a nice, upright, neutral spine. What I want to add here is that the pelvic floor strength shouldn't be treated in isolation, but in the context of your entire core, your pelvic floor, your TA, and your lower back muscles and diaphragm. We've got a little diagram here which shows where your pelvic floor is. You can make this shape with your hand, and that's your pelvic floor. The tips here are your sort of vagina, your urethra end, and the back is your tailbone, anus end. We want this whole area to lift and relax in response to a stimulus or to a load. And we want this working together with our core and everything else. So it's not just isolated and taking the entire load, being overworked. And that's usually what starts to lead to incontinence issues and prolapse, like what we talked about previously. So as I said, let's get into that correct body alignment, nice neutral spine. And first we want to relax. Now, a relaxation is really important, especially if you have a tight pelvic floor. Then the issue is relaxing. And often the prescription that you'll be given by a women's health physio is not necessarily more pelvic floor exercises, but things that you can do to relax your pelvic floor. On that inhale, you're going to relax your muscles. You're going to fill your tummy, breathe into your belly, not into your chest, and push it out and out around the sides. Then you are going to squeeze from front to back, from vagina to anus, like you're trying to stop a wee or a fart. Then you're doing this as you start exhaling, and you're going to lift, and you're going to imagine that you are lifting your pelvic floor up towards your belly button as you inhale, or you're picking up a tissue out of a tissue box, or you're sucking up water through a straw. So it's a very light contraction that we're looking for here, but then we want it coupled with that relaxation as you inhale. Now I want you to slouch, and I want you to try that again and see if you notice any different. Did you feel your TA engaged before, your transverse abdominals? Those are your deep lower core muscles that sit kind of below your belly button. Sometimes you can feel them in around the hip area, and they might have drawn in when you sat up straight and tall, but then when you slouch, they give you that kind of poochy belly feeling. Ideally, what you would have felt is that it was much easier to feel that pelvic floor, that hammock between your sit bones lift and drop when you are in correct alignment, as opposed to being slouched over. So now that we've talked about the pelvic floor, let's see if you are run ready. So you can have a go at these exercises now, or some of them if you would like, or obviously save this and watch it in the replay and do it in your own time. I'm going to take you through a series of tests, and I'll go through these in more detail in my free guide, and there's going to be a link to that free postpartum running guide in the email that you'll get after this seminar. What I want you to watch for when you're doing these exercises are any red flags. So the first is leakage, solid, liquid, or gas, including queefs, pain, be it joint, be it pubic, be it pelvic pain. If you feel any pressure through your vagina or anus, it could be heaviness, it could be aching, it could be a bulging feeling around that area. If you experience any of those things, you're to stop. If it's a time-based exercise, note the time. If it's a rep-based exercise, note the number of reps. And there'll be some base marks or base times that you reach to be run ready. So the first one that we are going to be doing is our strength category. So in the video, it was going through a demonstration of some of those exercises. We want the wall sit and a plank, and you want to be able to do that for a minute each. Side planks, 30 seconds each side, and the single leg glute bridge, 30 seconds each side. If I go back and forth, I might be able to start it again. Here we go. So that's the wall sit. The single leg squat to chair, I like to include this one in, 8 each leg, because you are running as a single leg activity. So we need to really test that single leg. And you'll also notice here the differences between one leg and the other. Same with the single leg glute bridge. You probably will notice a difference between one leg versus the other leg. Then the next category are our balance category. So we want a single leg balance, at least 30 each side. And you can challenge yourself by closing your eyes if you are good at balance. And then we're doing a single leg heel raise. We want to be able to do 25 each leg at a minimum. Ideally, if you can do this without putting your hand on the wall or having something else to help balance you, that's going to be even better. Try to use the wall as little as you need to. there in the video there, that's the single leg squat to chair that I was talking about. There's our single leg balance. So relatively straightforward, but sometimes a lot easier a lot harder than it looks. And then the single leg heel raise there. Then we've got our impact exercises. So this is where you might want to download a metronome. We want to be able to jump on the spot for 60 seconds and here without leaking, without any pain or any pressure through our pelvic floor. You want to be jumping at a rate of 150 beats per minute and try to keep in time with that for the whole 60 seconds. Then you're going to be hopping on one leg. That hop is also at 150 beats per minute, but you only have to do it for 30 seconds each side. So less, it is harder. Again, you may notice a difference between each side. If you're great at jumping up and down on the spot and hopping up and down on the spot, you can try a side to side one for an extra challenge. Then it's jogging on the spot for a minute. So you're running on the spot. And this is at 170 beats per minute. So it's a little faster, but it's because it is meant to replicate that running feeling a little bit more. And here in the videos are our jumping up and down. Make sure when you jump that you are actually leaving the ground because we do want to test that impact. That's the point of these exercises, to see if you are ready to run. So don't try to cheat yourself out of the exercises because it's just going to mean you're going to give yourself some unrealistic results. So if you are able to do all of these at the times and the reps that I've set, then you are ready to run. That doesn't mean that you might not have pains or little niggles or something come up as you run, because you will still need a gradual progression in your running program, but you at least have a good base to start with. If you don't, then what I would encourage you to do is have a strength program to work on those things to get you strong to be able to start your running program, and then you'll be at much lesser risk of injury than if you start running now with some of these weaknesses. So let's talk about running training then for those who are ready to run, or when you are ready to run. So I would suggest no more than 3 runs per week when you are returning to running. That way you can alternate between running days and rest days, or you can do some cross training, a non-running related activity in the other days in between. So this gives your body a chance to recover from the impact and stress of running, and also allows you to monitor for any niggles or side effects from your running. You should also know and be aware that it takes about 3 weeks for your body to adjust to a new exercise or training stress. And your cardiovascular system will increase and get fitter at a much greater rate than your muscles and your joints. So just because 1 week goes smoothly doesn't necessarily mean you have a green light to ramp up training. Give it at least that 3 weeks or even a full month and see how your muscles and your joints respond at the end of that period. So err on the side of caution. Your lungs will probably feel fine after a few weeks, but that might not necessarily mean the rest of your body does, especially if you've had birthing complications. Strength. So what we just identified in the running readiness test, even if you passed it, you'll probably notice that you have imbalances or some parts of your body that are stronger than others, sides included. So strength training 3 times a week is ideal. Doesn't have to be over an hour or even an hour each session. 3 20-minute blocks will suit just fine, and especially for new mums is going to be much more easily achievable than trying to get to the gym or do a long session, because you can fit a 3 20-minute ones across the week, hopefully in time with some naps. Of course, if you need to sleep, then you sleep. So 3 a week is ideal, 2 is better than 1, and 1 is better than none. So something over nothing always wins. This can be at home or at the gym. And the reality is that if you're on maternity leave or have budget constraints, then home is much more realistic. Great. Recovery. Now, this is where the fitness gains are cemented. So rest days and download weeks are just as important as the running itself. Running isn't a linear progression. Rest days and rest weeks are needed to minimize the injury and burnout risk. Again, such an important thing when you have a newborn, because your energy is going to be zapped and you're going to be pulled in so many different directions. So rest and recovery are hugely important, and also why it's important not to start running too soon after birth, because, unless your baby's an absolute angel, highly likely that you're still waking multiple times through the night and have quite demanding days. So here's an example of a strength training program that I'd recommend if you're starting out, and it's one that you can also easily do at home. What we want to work on is doing the basics right. So there's no need for fancy exercises and complicated movements. Just focus on your squats, your lunges, your basic kind of hinges, and you'll go, really well with that. So again, if you're in that 0 to 8th month postpartum phase, your body is still realigning. So you may have to modify things. Don't try to, push things too far, especially if you're breastfeeding and still have relaxin in your body, which we'll talk about next as well. But I'd suggest 2 to 3 sets of these exercises, 8 to 10 reps each or each side, and that'll take you roughly about 20 minutes to do. Having some simple equipment at home can be really helpful, like this band here to do things like monster walks. You can even put them around to do lunges and squats, as well as your bridges to help keep those knees in line and provide a little bit of extra pressure. Also really handy for other exercises like clamshells, which are another good exercise if you know how to do them properly. So breastfeeding and running. So let's look at breastfeeding and other weird things that sort of happen after you've had a baby. So I mentioned that relaxin hormone, it stays in your body for up to 3 months after birth or until you stop breastfeeding. So there are a few things we need to keep in mind, probably very similar to what you were told when you were pregnant. Overstretching, avoid overstretching or even overdoing exercise. So be careful on trails and uneven surfaces if you're running, because you may be more likely to roll an ankle while your joints are still more malleable. Tip 2, drink more water. Be aware of this, particularly during the summer months. We're coming into the warmer months now, and also make sure you're fueling properly for your runs. Breastfeeding adds an extra layer to this. We're told when we're breastfeeding, we actually really do need to eat more because of the energy it takes to produce the milk. So if you're adding exercise on top of that, I'd really discourage you from thinking of exercise as a weight loss tool at this stage. Think of it as mental health or helping to get you stronger and fitter. But if you're eating well and fueling for your runs, you're going to put on lean muscle and reduce body fat anyway. You don't need to restrict what you are eating, particularly while you're breastfeeding. Then the other tip is pump or feed before your run, and invest in a good quality sports bra. You may even need to wear 2, but only wear them for the run because they'll be quite tight and supportive. And while that's a good thing when you're running, we don't want to block the milk ducts and end up with things like mastitis. So once you're finished, take them off. My other tip is to wear properly fitted shoes. I haven't included this on your sheet, but again, relaxin can make your feet bigger. This may be temporary, it may be permanent, but if you're breastfeeding and you're going to maybe breastfeed for up to a year or so, it's well worth getting some running shoes that fit, because 1, you'll feel comfortable and that's going to make you want to keep running, and 2, you'll wear through those shoes in 12 months anyway. Running with a stroller. This is quite a big one, because this is the great thing about running and why so many mums want to do it, because it is easy to do with your baby. But what you want to do is invest in a proper running stroller, not just your normal stroller that you take for walks and about the shops. A proper running stroller, it's safer for you and it's safer for the baby. But think about where you're going to be running and what terrain you're in. Are you going to be on footpaths, windy streets, or do you run on straight trails, lots of sort of beachfront tracks, that sort of thing, where it's nice and flat? There are some with the fixed wheel that are really great for running in straight lines, but you might want one where the wheel can turn so that you can take it around corners much more easily. Also think about to run as naturally as possible. Running with a stroller does change your running style, which is why it's actually not really recommended to do until you're a bit further down the postpartum journey and have built that strength up, like in the running readiness test that we talked about. Think of it, you especially if you're going uphill, you're essentially doing a sled push, which is going to require some core strength. It's also going to require some strength from your back. And yeah, we don't want to cause any injuries to the knees because you have to change the way you run. So we're trying not to actually push the stroller. And so I'd recommend starting somewhere flat to get used to that action first. So that's the tip 3. Start on the flat and then walk up the hills if you need to start with at least. Okay, tip number 4, make sure you have enough compartments to carry everything that you need. This can also mean, though, that with the baby weight, the stroller can get quite heavy. So again, starting on the flat is really important. You also want to think about things like rain covers and wind covers and some shade covers so that you can protect your baby from hot days, wind and rain. And then you can pretty much go out running in all conditions and the baby is going to be as snug as a bug in a rug. And you might be a little bit miserable depending on the weather, but the baby will be perfectly happy no matter where you are. Okay, so as you can see here, I know what I'm talking about. I've been through the journey and I have the qualifications. As I said at the start, I have extensive racing history, including world championship events. And I just wanted to include here some of my qualifications and partnerships for you to see again. I'm working with Lorna Jane, I'm working with the Wellington Marathon, and I am an accredited MumSafe trainer. I work with the pelvic health physiotherapy team, and I also have a free lunchtime run that I partner with Lorna Jane in Wellington to deliver. So we meet every Thursday lunchtime at 12:30 p.m. at the Lorna Jane store on Lambton Quay to make the most of our lunchtime run time and head out for some quality run sessions. So if you're interested in that, you can find the details on Facebook on my page and events, or feel free to contact me directly if you've got questions about that. So if you're still with me this far and you are thinking, I would like to return to run, maybe not immediately, but maybe it's on your radar, then get your program, your Run Confident, Run Strong. It's an 8-week gradual return to run program. So if you are frustrated with running, you don't know how to progress, or you're getting injured or burnt out, or maybe you find that you're struggling to fit everything in and are just overwhelmed with all the information out there when you do a Google, but you also don't have the time to actually sit through all the information to filter out what is true and what isn't, then this is the program for you. I've put in everything that you're going to need for the return to run journey, and it's your one-stop shop. So you don't have to Google anything anymore. You will get a 8-week comprehensive program, and you get to keep it for life. You'll have run walk strategies to safely build up the distance, as well as strength exercises to complement the running workouts and hopefully keep you injury free. This program is designed by me as a mum for a mum, but also as an accredited running and triathlon coach. And it also takes into account not just your postpartum body, but your postpartum life. So it's got detailed guidance on postpartum running, including rebuilding your core strength, pelvic floor, breastfeeding, etc. Some more detail on the stuff that we've gone over in this masterclass. I designed it to be more than just a running program. As I said, it has your cross training in it, and it has key information in it about your postpartum journey. So I want you to meet Natasha. Natasha has bought the program, and she came to me after the birth of her first child, wanting to get back into running and train for a half marathon. She had run previously, but she always got the odd niggle here and there when trying to rebuild her running time and distance. But after following my program for 3 months, I remember her commenting that she realized she didn't have her normal niggles when building up this time around. She also appreciated the fact that the program considered and worked in with mum life. So this is one of the benefits of having an objective person set your program for you and having a program to follow. It's also especially important when your usual training patterns may now no longer work for you and your postpartum body, but you're not quite sure how you change it. So it's not necessarily for the beginner runner or just for the beginner runner. You may have run before you were pregnant, but now finding that that normal training pattern that you did doesn't work for you anymore. So as I mentioned, we get bonuses for registering and buying that program. This is just for registering for the masterclass. So everyone who registered today will receive a copy of my Return to Running guide and nutrition cheat sheet to help you with fueling for those runs and also recovering for the runs. So those are yours to keep regardless of what you do next. But if you like what you've heard in this masterclass and you're liking the sound of the postpartum Run Confident, Run Strong program, if you buy before midnight tonight, you will receive $20 off the normal retail price. Just use that code RCRS20 when you go to the page in the email that I'll send out shortly after this seminar. And also, if you buy tonight, you'll get another fast action bonus, which is a free 30-minute one-on-one coaching call with me. This is valued at $80. We can talk through the program in more detail, or we can talk about anything postpartum running related. You may have further questions, or you may have different considerations and want to know how to adapt the program to suit it. This is only until midnight tonight, so don't wait. Do action that if you want to get those fast action bonuses. As I said, you don't have to be 100% running ready right now. You get to keep that program for life, but you're going to get it at a good price, and you're going to get a one-on call with me as well. Let's go through a little bit of a recap today, because in the meantime, there is plenty you can do at home to start to rebuild your strength and get your body ready for running. Think of any analogy you like, but they all have a strong foundation for their success. So we've got our return to running timeline, and the general guide is to wait until 12 weeks after birth. But again, you can be starting on those pelvic floor exercises or building strength with some home-based exercises. But remember, this is going to be affected by your birthing complications, recovery, and your baby. Your pelvic floor health and how to do pelvic floor exercises. We went through how to do this correctly, but do see a woman's health physio, because they will be able to 100% make sure that you're going to do them correctly. And also, it's just a nice box to tick before you start running. Think of it like your 6-week GP checkup. It's always better to come armed with the full picture rather than trying to rehab after injuries, and seeing as that 6-week checkup does not actually give you an all clear to exercise or run, but the women's health physio will be able to take it that next step further. Now, I took you through a series of tests to form your baseline and see if you are run ready. But if you're not, or even if you are, I do again recommend you see a women's health physio or see a MumSafe trainer for some personal training or programming, if not, like myself. Now, tips for running with a stroller and breastfeeding. We went through these because this is all part of that return to run journey when you're postpartum, and they will all have an impact to some degree or another on how you run and the energy that you have to run. Remember, until midnight tonight, use that code to get 20% off Run Confident, Run Strong. Thank you very much for watching. And if you think of any further questions or want to contact me to chat about running further, you'll have my details from the email. Keep an eye out on your emails for that tonight. And I hope to see some of you in the program and furthering your running journey. Ka kite, everyone, and have a great evening. See you.